Prosecutor says, we have subpoenaed from Verizon phone records. Ms. Garagos, this is Tenny Garagos referring to Sean Combs' defense counsel. Ms. Garagos has agreed that if Your Honor finds them admissible, you can give them to us and we to them. Garagos responds, that's fine. The judge says, let's get Mia back. So we're going to see the continuation of her testimony. We'll break it down in real time. Okay, here we go. Question from KC. I go to you, Alexis. Is it true jurors make a decision of guilt or not guilty within the first couple of days of trial?
Well, I mean, jurors are human. So, I mean, appearances and what they're seeing, but they could have an initial opinion and then it can be shifted as testimony comes out. I mean, they are supposed to keep an open mind and they're supposed to listen to the testimony. But I think in this case, like David said, I mean, he's coming across with all this testimony as a pure monster, in my opinion. So I don't know if the defense is going to get and be able to shift what they already have in their mind.
That raises a bigger question here, David, right? I've talked day in and day out about the law, about the elements, about all that. You think the jury's going to come back and say, wow, what did we just hear over the past 8 weeks? We really do not like this guy. We want to convict him of something. Let me be clear. They shouldn't do that, okay? I don't care what the defendant is. I don't care who the defendant is. You should not, as a juror who has a very important responsibility, make a decision based on emotion. You base it on the facts, you base it on the law, the jury instructions, the arguments. You don't do it based on, we think he's a bad guy, he must have committed some crime. No, did the prosecution prove this case, these charges beyond a reasonable doubt? But they're humans, David. What do you think?
Well, look, that's why closing arguments are going to be vitally important in this case. And going back to the other question, yeah, sure, there's jurors who make up their mind before the trial is actually over. But I'll tell you this, I've had a lot of trials. I've talked to a lot of jurors after the trials. The vast majority of jurors, truly, they follow the judge's instruction and they go into deliberations with a fairly open mind. And they listen to the other jurors. And oftentimes, they go in with one position in their head and they're swayed to change their mind because of jury deliberations, and they take it very seriously. So I think, I give the jury the benefit of the doubt in this case that they're all taking this incredibly seriously. They're all going to deliberate in good faith. But closing arguments will be crucial because, the prosecution is going to probably say just that. Hey, you can't convict him just because you don't like him. Here's the elements of these crimes. And the prosecution, we've fulfilled all these elements. That's why you convict him.
Got a super chat question from Nestdog. Nestdog, thank you so much. I'll throw it to you, Alexis. Can the judge give instructions to the jury stating he will not allow a hung jury?
No, the judge cannot do that. If the judge can send the jury back to continue to deliberate, but he cannot instruct the jury that he won't allow a hung jury.
Can give an Allen charge, right? Basically, like if they're like, we're deadlocked, continue deliberating. I'm encouraging you, go back, try to deliberate. Sometimes it comes back with a guilty verdict. Sometimes it comes back with an acquittal. Sometimes they come back, we're still undecided. Okay, update from court. All rise. Prosecutor Smizer is asking Mia, again, alleged victim number 4. Mia, you were speaking about violence between Mr. Combs and Cassie. Have you traveled to Turks and Caicos? Yes, to Parrot Cay twice in 2012, me, Puff, and Cass. What happened? I was sleeping in my bedroom and I was woken up. That travel component is really important, David, right?
Yeah, it goes right to the heart of the sex trafficking, the transportation for prostitution. Every time you hear travel, they're not just putting that in there, just to put it in there. It's important to these particular elements of these crimes that there's transportation that leads to some sort of criminal act.
Got a question from Ashley Glass. If Diddy gets acquitted for this, can the government retry? Nope. If he's acquitted, that's the end of the case. That's the end of those charges. All right, we have a poll. Do you think victim 3's refusal to testify could negatively impact the state's case, Alexis? 61% say no, 38% say yes. Your reaction, Alexis, to that?
No, I don't think it will. I mean, we don't know exactly what they're going to testify to. So it may be that the victim had this wonderful testimony that would have been great for the prosecution, but without knowing the specifics of that testimony, the mere fact of them not testifying, no, I don't believe it will be an issue.
Got a continuation of what's happening in court. So Mia has testified again regarding this Turks and Caicos trip to Parrot Cay, which she said, I was sleeping in my bedroom. I was woken up. Cass ran in saying, you've got to help me. He's going to kill me. Prosecutor asks, what did you do? We started pushing furniture in front of the door to try to block it. Puff was banging and screaming. I had a porch that went out to the beach. We ran. Now, David, again, the defense would be saying you have described, prosecutors, a lot of violent episodes, a lot of domestic violence, a toxic relationship, arguably state crimes. How is this racketeering? How is this sex trafficking? What would your answer be?
Well, look, you got to look at the totality of this evidence, the totality of the circumstances for this entire case. And I truly think what's going to happen as we move into this more testimony with Mia is that, Mia, we know she's sexually assaulted by Diddy. And so again, these violent acts are super important because it allows him to control these victims. And it goes right to the heart of these charges, that these threats, this violence, all leads to sex trafficking, to trafficking and prostitution. It's this criminal enterprise. And that's what it comes down to.
Yep. I got another great question. This is from Jesper Sparrow. I'm going to throw this to you, Alexis. Did Cassie get immunity for her testimony? And if so, why wasn't it used for impeachment purposes?
I don't believe that she did. They could have offered her that potentially, because I think that would have come out. There would have been some questioning of her about whether she received immunity.
And
so
what
I
would
don't
she get?
believe-
And what would she get immunity for exactly? Well, let me ask. Immunity if she was part of hiring sex workers for prostitution, I guess?
Well, here's the thing. One of the questions that I've seen come across is why aren't there other people that have been named as defendants in this racketeering case along with Diddy? So, there probably are, which they don't have to do, by the way. You don't have to name everybody as part of the enterprise. But there may have been people that have given testimony or information to the government that they did receive immunity, that they're going to put on the stand, they're not planning on putting on the stand, but they just got information from them, because that is not uncommon. So that may have happened, but I don't think she was given immunity because it would have come out as part of the testimony.
Yeah, there was other conversations about immunity and proffer agreements with respect to assistance, and also potentially if bodyguards testify, I would imagine the same thing, and I wouldn't be surprised by that because, again, if he is charged with a racketeering conspiracy, he can't do it himself. He couldn't have committed these crimes and covered them up all by himself, so you'd have to imagine that the people he did it with or allegedly did it with would have taken some sort of deal or have some sort of protection to testify against him. Okay, going back to court, prosecutor asks Mia, what do you remember about running? Mia responds, I remember being amazed that even while running fast, we could be attacked by bugs. Did you run another time? I have another visual of where we were hiding, of trying to escape like 2 separate times. Interesting. Okay. Listen to this one. This is for you. Well, actually, it's not necessarily a question. It's a poll, but I think it's a really interesting poll, David. If convicted, do you think Diddy will regret not taking his original plea deal? 76% say yes, 23% say no. Now, to be clear, we don't know what that deal consisted of. If you ask me, it had to be double digits. I don't think that they were going to offer him anything less than 10 years when they're basically describing him being a criminal leader, a mafia boss almost, and what he's accused of doing, sex trafficking, committing all these crimes, where he faces charges that could send him to life in prison. I don't think they would have offered him 5 years. But what do you think? You think he'll regret it if he's convicted?
Well, no, I agree. I think if there was a plea deal, it was significant. And yeah, look, he's facing life in prison if convicted of some of these charges. And some of the other ones carry, 15, 20 years minimum. And so if he's convicted, he's looking at, minimum of 15 years, possibly life. And so if he looks back on it and says, you know what, I could have taken a plea deal. I maybe could have saved all of this information and horrible evidence from coming out. He could have served, 7, 8, 9 years and getting out for good behavior. Yeah, he's probably going to regret it.
Well, David, I mean, we got a question from Leslie. Will we ever hear what Diddy's plea deal was?
Probably not. I mean, look, maybe it comes out after this trial that someone says, here's what he was offered, but are we going to be able to really rely upon that information unless it comes from the government itself? So we may not know what deal he was offered. We may never know that. And we might. Maybe they come out and do say, hey, we offered the guy 10 years. But again, most of the time you don't hear that.
Okay, so I have good news. Well, not only do I have Alexis and David, but now we also have Nima Rahmani, former federal prosecutor. Look at that. Look at the boxes just like this. It's like the Brady Bunch over here. Nima, good to have you. Welcome to the conversation. Okay, a lot to talk about. So first of all, more updates from court about Mia's testimony. We got onto the paddle boards, went out to the water. Puff was on the beach screaming at us. It was flat. We went out far. Puff got smaller and smaller on the beach. The sky got dark, and then all of a sudden, Sean Combs' counsel, Brian Steele, says, objection, overruled. We went back. Did you ever call the police? No. Why not? I believe Puff's authority was above the police. This was before social media and Me Too. There were no examples of people standing up. I thought it was under the confidentiality deal with Puff's business. So, Nima, that's a big point, right? I've said it before. I'll say it again. A big theme I think the jury's going to have to wrestle with is why didn't Cassie leave? Why didn't Cassie step forward? Why did nobody else report what Combs was doing? How is it possible that, according to Dawn Richard, Cassie was beat up by Diddy in front of high-profile celebrities? Nobody stepped in. That power dynamic, who he is important in this case, right?
Jesse, you're absolutely right. It's extremely important. And look, abusers often have power over their victims, but here the power disparity is something else. And there's this other underlying theme that we're getting out, and it really was the basis for the mistrial motion yesterday, that Combs was above the law, right? He was doing all this, and he could pay his way or use his power and influence not to be prosecuted by law enforcement. So obviously, what the defense wants to do is say, no, there's not this disparity in power. What they're trying to do is actually build up the victims, right? This is a theme in their opening statement, that these are strong, independent women who are making their own decision. But the prosecution is saying, no. Here's someone who controlled every aspect of their life. And the reason the victims didn't leave, like you asked, Jesse, is because they didn't think they could, because of all the control and influence that Combs had.
Nima, I'm going to throw this to you. This is from PIMA 1982. In your opinion, how many parts of RICO have already been proven?
I think we've satisfied RICO. You have the criminal enterprise, right? Bad boy records. And we know it doesn't have to be the mob or the cartel. It can be a much looser association. Then you have the conspiracy, right? The agreement to do something unlawful. I think that's satisfied. Obviously, the most important thing everyone is talking about is those pattern of racketeering acts. I think, look, even if you don't believe sex trafficking, even if you think this was all consensual, I think you got arson. I think you got kidnapping. I think you got intimidation. You got obstruction. You got prostitution. You got plenty of predicate acts here, Jesse. So I think RICO has been established. And frankly, I think the RICO charge is easier to prove for the government than the sex trafficking.
Got a super chat question. I'll throw it to you, Nima. This is from Donizi TV. Thank you so much for your super chat question. Are there any state charges Diddy could face?
It's tough. I'm here in Los Angeles where the 2016 hotel assault happened, and statute is run on that, unfortunately. It's hard. Some of this is dated. Even Cassie's allegation regarding her rape, that's probably the most likely to be charged stateside. But I think if Combs is convicted, it's going to be a moot point. He's going to do double-digit years in federal prison. If he's acquitted, I can't see the DA here Nathan Hockman filing additional charges after what would be a very high-profile acquittal.
Okay, so we got an update from court. Again, the continued testimony of Mia, alleged victim number 4. Prosecutor asks, "What's this?" Mia responds, "A photo of Cass eating a hot dog at the premiere of her movie, The Perfect Match. She is bruising under her makeup. I took this photo. Any other injuries covered up on a red carpet? Yes, at the Cannes Film Festival. What injuries did you see? A busted lip. She was injured. Where were you? In her hotel room with Larry Sims, her hairstylist. Did you learn how she got the injuries? Cass had an audio recording of Puff attacking her." Go to you, David, on this. This is a question from Christine Dobson. Might have been posted before, but I missed it. Is the jury sequestered? No, they're not sequestered, but I'll throw this to you, Dave. Do you think they should have been?
No. Look, in nowadays, very, very few juries are ever sequestered. It turns into an absolute nightmare. Jurors do not want to be locked up in a hotel room for 2 months and not seeing anyone. And with social media and the phones and this and that, it doesn't do any good anyways. I mean, it might have worked back in the day when truly they would have no TV in the hotel room and would have no information about the case. But even if you did lock them away, they'd have plenty of information if they wanted to look at it. So there's just no reason to do that. The judge always says, do not read the media, do not read accounts of the case, do not talk to anyone about the case. Every day they get that instruction and hopefully they follow it.
Alexis, interesting question, interesting poll. Do you think Diddy's defense genuinely believes they can win this for their client? 58% say no, 41% say yes. Your reaction to that, Alexis?
I don't think that they think they can win this. No, I think it's clear that we've got a lot of damaging testimony and evidence, and I think they have some concerns. They've got to do some fancy dancing to convince the jury that not to convict him.
Got an update from court. Prosecutor asking Mia, "How did Cassie sound on the audio recording?" There's an objection from defense counsel. It was overruled. Mia said, "Panicked. I heard the sound of someone getting hit." Did you go to events? The premiere of Brad Pitt's movie, Killing Them Softly. What happened at the premiere? Puff was digging his nails into her arm and talking low. What would Mr. Combs ask you to do? Take care of her. I bring her arnica gel. For what? Bruises. Talk to us about why that's important for sex trafficking and why that's important for racketeering, Nima.
So sex trafficking, you need that force, fraud, or coercion, right? And we've spent a lot of time in this case talking about force and coercion. Coercion being the drugs, holding the sex tapes over her, that extortion, right? She was concerned that if she left or if she said no, the sex tapes would be put on the internet or sent to her parents' place of work. And then, of course, for the racketeering, obviously, to the extent that there's violence. Now, obviously, domestic violence, assault, they're not racketeering elements. But if there is violence in connection with kidnapping, for instance, right? Kidnapping someone like Capricorn Clark or someone like Cassie Ventura, that violence, that can all come into evidence to the extent that we're dealing with racketeering predicates.
And if this is true, that he's digging his nails into her arm, talking low, that level of control, and having his assistant cover it up, again, goes to this idea of a criminal pattern that he's using his resources and his business and his employees to further this criminal activity. We have a super chat question from Ever Rios. Thank you so much. Is there no recording at all? Not even the courtroom cam? There is no recording. We do get the transcripts. What we try to do on Law&Crime, we've been experimenting with a little bit, is we put it into this AI program. So we're creating AI recreations. We did it of the opening statements. We did it of Cassie's testimony. Federal courts, unfortunately, they haven't gotten up to the times. And I think that this is a big problem in terms of transparency, particularly in an important case like this, a case of public interest like this. But we're trying to do the best we can of, putting you in that courtroom as to what's happening with this testimony. Okay. Alexis, question from Merlene Spies. Can witness 3 not get arrested for not coming to court?
So they can subpoena her, and yes, she can be held in contempt. I think that the issue that prosecutors have with anytime you want to put a witness that doesn't want to be there on the stand, the testimony can be damaging to the prosecution. So prosecutors are very hesitant to do that, to force a witness that's supposed to be testifying on their behalf to come testify. So you got to balance, you have to balance that. Also, do you want to put someone in jail for not testifying when they've already been victimized?
All right, before we wrap things up, I got one last question for all three of you. I'm going to take it one by one. This is from Leg 7K. Quick question coming at the end of week 3, going into week 4. Who does the panel think has the advantage so far? Thank you. I'll start with you, Nima.
Oh, in my estimation, this is the former federal prosecutor to me, the prosecution has a clear edge right now. I mean, between the video evidence and victim after victim that's telling the same story, the jurors might disbelieve one of them, but there's no way they're going to disbelieve everyone. I think we're marching towards a conviction here, Jesse.
David, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with Nima. Boy, it's been a powerful, compelling case so far put on the prosecution, and it doesn't look like it's getting any weaker. Each witness that they put forward each new day seems to have something new and compelling to say. So it's not looking good for the defense.
And Alexis, before I throw to you, just interesting poll result. Do you think Diddy should face any state charges for these alleged crimes? 85% say yes, 15% say no. So even, I guess, putting aside the statute of limitations issues that might arise. So Alexis, I'll throw back the question from Leg 7K. As we close out this week, who do you think has the advantage so far?
The prosecution, but remember, this is their case in chief right now. So if they didn't have the advantage right now, then they would be in some real trouble.
That's a good point. Alexis Rosenberg, David Ring, Nima Rahmani, thank you all for taking the time. Really, really appreciate it. All-star panel. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right.
Bye, Alexis.
Now, before we wrap things up, again, we're planning to do these lunchtime shows, take your questions every day of this trial. Again, we want to kind of put you in the courtroom as much as we possibly can. That's why it's great to have Elizabeth Milner on, who's been in that courtroom and giving us kind of a bird's eye view about what's happening. But one of the other reasons that we can do this is because we get incredible support from our partner and sponsor, Morgan & Morgan. This is America's largest injury law firm. And I'll give you an idea here. This is a firm, okay, incredible track record. So they secured a $6 million verdict for a car crash victim in Florida, $13 million for a wrongful auto death in Georgia, and another $6 million for a trucking accident in New York. And mind you, this was all after insurance offered their clients significantly less in each of these cases. And even if you think your case isn't worth millions of dollars, why not just start a claim and see what you can get? Fight for what you deserve, because Morgan & Morgan, they make the process so simple. It can all be done right from your phone. In fact, you can do it from your phone in just 8 clicks. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Live by clicking the link below or scanning the QR code on screen. Thank you so much, everybody, for your questions. Thank you so much for your support. I'm Jesse Weber. We'll catch you next time.